Welcome back to the Socially Delightful podcast. Today I have my dear friend, somebody I absolutely adore on the podcast to talk about a new business that she is starting. But y'all, even if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't do business, I don't have to network, etc. Y'all, in this episode, we break down how we have used connection, relational intelligence to grow our business, whether it's pitching, whether it's trying to get a job or an internship. I tell the story of how I landed my internship, even though I was really scared that I wasn't going to get it. We dive into all of that in this episode today. So, welcome back to the Socially Delightful podcast. So, I have my dear friend Nikki on the podcast. Nikki deeply understands the power of connection and vulnerability. Y'all, after a challenging period involving the loss of her mom and leaving a narcissistic relationship, she started a podcast called Can I Just Say? And it became a vital part of her journey through hundreds of conversations. I was also on this podcast, Can I Just Say? Nikki witnessed the profound impact of sharing our stories and the way that we relate to others and serve others. Nikki is one of the best interviewers I have ever been interviewed by. And y'all, I have done over 100 podcasts where I have guested on over 100 podcasts. Crazy. So I am so excited to talk with Nikki today. So much expertise around this. Nikki is also co-hosting now Healthy Love. It's a podcast dedicated to helping listeners cultivate self-love and create more emotional intimacy in their relationships. Oh my gosh, so up our alley. And today she's going to be talking about her new service, personalized podcast services. So if you are looking to become a guest on podcasts, if you are looking to learn more about pitching, Nikki's business is way up your alley. It's personalized podcast services. We're going to have the links down below. I am absolutely ecstatic to have her on. Also, I'm so sorry about the fan in last week's episode. I am a boomer and didn't set up the right microphone setting. We live and we learn, y'all. It's a small and mighty team that we have here. So my apologies for that. And also in this episode here today, your girl has some tummy gurgles, and I didn't realize that it was very loud until at some point I was like, oh wait, Nikki could hear my hip crack in this episode. She probably heard my stomach gurgles too. So I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat. Enjoy this episode. It's absolutely fantastic. I will tell you, last Friday, I normally record my episodes on Friday. I recorded. I was like, wow, amazing, beautiful. Loved that episode. I was so funny. The information, it's going to be great. And then I accidentally deleted it, and there's no recovery feature in Riverside, and I had to leave. I had stuff to do that day. I had prior commitments. So I ended up recording the episode at 2 a.m. So everybody, if this gets included, Nick, you decide. I recorded last week's episode at 2 a.m. on Friday.
Listen, I feel like one of the things that people don't witness when you do a podcast is the amount of thought that goes into the details that don't make the cut, right?
Yeah.
Or the behind the scenes. Part of what actually really inspired me to do what I was sharing with you around my new business is because, I gave you the stat. Podmatch does a monthly, I think, or maybe quarterly report where they speak about the state of podcasting. And it was showing that, giving all the stats around podcasters. But one of the things, and it just blew my mind, and I could not get it out of my head, was that there are 4.4 million guests trying to get on 107,000 podcasts. And you're like, that math doesn't math. And if you want to have an opportunity, you better be saying something really compelling. You better be the most interesting person on earth at this point. And of course, there's nuance with that, right? Like you have a specific niche. And so now you're looking at X number of people into Y number of podcasts. And so I understand that there's a lot of nuance in that. But at the same time, it was like, God, as a podcaster, I know that everybody's marketing to the podcaster. Everybody wants to help us grow our show. And not as many people are focused on how to help guests elevate their message, proliferate their message. And so I started thinking, you and I have had so many conversations about the value of connection. And I'm like, I love connecting with people. That was the whole point of me starting a podcast. And it really just started spinning the wheels about like, well, how can I help people on their journey? And so even just little things, I thought about how many times do people who are wanting to start a show or want to be guests ask me like, hey, what equipment do you use? What do you recommend? How do you get started? Where do you host your show? Or what do I do to put something into a pitch? Like what are the different ways that you actually navigate the journey, whether you're a host or a guest? And it was just like all of a sudden it was this convergence of everything that I had been learning, all of the information that I had been gathering and skills I'd been gathering over the last 6 years. And the light bulb went off just because of one data point that I happened to see that day, you know? And it's just such a great example of how we have so much within us that I think we leave unexplored until the right catalyst comes along. And then when that happens, you're just sort of propelled forward. And conversations like ours have also really helped me recognize and own the talent that I do have to connect with people and do that in a way that feels personal and not transactional, even if there is a business component to it. So it was really exciting to get to that place. And so when you think about different platforms and things like that you use, it's like we do it so we kind of assume that people know,
Mm-hmm.
but so many people are starting from scratch and there's a whole wealth of information for audiences that are very untapped. And I'd love to just be able to help people move along on their journey more quickly and effectively, because how much time do you spend researching, trying to find the right information, hoping that you get it? I mean, the best way to get it is from somebody who's already done it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. 1,000%. 1,000%. So, Nikki, your business, do you want to tell everybody
Yeah.
what it is? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the opportunity. It's the name is still sort of just a descriptor at this point. I don't know if that'll change, but it's Personalized Podcast Services, personalizedpodcastservices.com if you want to go check it out. And basically what I'm doing is working with clients who are professionals, purpose driven, impact driven professionals who want to be making meaningful change in the world in some way and helping really excavate your story. So it's kind of what I've started explaining it as is it's a hybrid of sort of coaching and consulting mixed with content creation. And so what I'm doing is basically saying, let's set up some time, help me understand who you are, what your story is, because now more than ever, I think it's incredibly important that we understand a little bit about who we're buying services or products from, right? Like we're feeling more emotionally attached to the mission and the intention. So many people are corrupt. So many people are transactional. So many people don't care about you and just want to make the money. I too want to make money because money is important for us to
Mm-hmm.
survive and thrive. That said, I want to be able to do that with integrity for my beliefs, my values, my morals. And that's not to say everybody has to have the same ones, but I want to work with people who are aligned. And I've made a lot of compromises in my career to take the job that paid me better, to move me out to Seattle, to whatever insert reason here I needed at the time to justify my decision to work somewhere that didn't fully align. And now that I'm in a place to have my own business, I'm like, I really don't want to compromise. If somebody is offering me a big check and I feel completely misaligned with them, I'm turning it down. I don't want to feel like I'm abandoning myself in the interest of money. What I want to do is align myself with people who have similar interests, a desire to expand our community and create more collective change so that then we can elevate each other's voices. And I see that as something that also provides longer term value to everyone involved. And so the process itself is basically getting to know you, understanding the angle with which you want to explain your story as it relates to your business, or perhaps just your personal brand that you're expanding into your business, really centering on your key talking points. And then essentially you can get one or several sessions based on which package you choose. And what we do is we sit down, record for about 60 minutes based on like these very curated, intentional key talking points that you want to touch on. So the conversation is structured, but the flow is still organic. And because I have all this experience interviewing people, like what I'm able to do is make sure that we're creating a dialogue that provides value for your potential clients. So it's content that you can use for social media, it's content that you can use on your website, it's content you can use for ads, and it's also content that's going to be very valuable for you if you are somebody, and especially because this is really the target market right now for me, is people who are new to podcast guesting. How do you get the experience if nobody's giving you the experience? It's like when I
Mhm.
got out of school and they're like, would you like this entry level position that you have no experience for? I'm sorry, we can't give it to you until you have something else on
Yeah.
your resume. You're like, how's that work? So in doing this, my intention is also to help people craft compelling pitches. And that's not just, here's your key talking points. Now you know how to send the email. Sure, that's part of it. But the other piece of it is that when we go back to that data point, you have 4.4 million people on a fraction of that amount of shows. And what makes you different? What makes you stand out? You could be sending roughly the same bullet point list to a host that same report said on average, hosts get around 41 messages per day pitching them. So, what makes you stand out? We've had a lot of success with helping clients them dynamic promo reels that pull together the content of our interview or interviews and create a video pitch that's between, like, let's say a minute and a half to 3 minutes, and helping really show not just what the message is and the value that you can provide to the audience, because that's super important, but it's also helping a host decide really quickly, what is the dynamic going to be like when you're on the show? Let's see how you sound, how you present, what you say, the way you say it, what energy you bring. And then I can decide if that's a fit for me. You're taking weight off the host, so we don't have to sift through other content and a whole episode somewhere where you've maybe guested before. We don't have to sort of go in and say, like, okay, well, I don't really know what they're going to sound like because they've never been on a show. So you're really packaging yourself in a way that's more complete and gives us as hosts a lot more of an expedited path to get to a yes or a no. And even if it's a no, one of the benefits of this in also creating a video pitch is that you can ask for direct feedback as to why. Maybe it's about the pitch, maybe it's about timing, maybe it's about something else. But that's the other part of it when it comes to the coaching and consulting. Like, how can we tweak your messaging? How can we help make sure that you're communicating your value in a really clear way? And if you're getting feedback on something that we've done, how can we iterate on that to continue to press forward and get more yeses for you as you're going through the process? And so it's just been really fulfilling for me to witness people really come out of their shell and show up because of how deeply I desire to connect with people. And the fact that while this is a business, my intention is not to just record something and get answers from you. It's to take that content and leverage that to your advantage, because in addition to all of that, get you can take the transcript, you can create blog posts with your content, you can create carousel posts with your content. Part of the packages that I offer is that you get the full length edited episode. So I have people who are posting these full episodes on their YouTube channels because it helps with their audience engagement. And then I'm also offering, in those packages, we include social media clips. So you get a handful of social media clips that you have already available. And it's just a way for you to spend an hour of your time, a couple of hours ultimately once the engagement is said and done, but a few hours of your time to get fully professionally edited, ready to roll content in your hands, while also really crystallizing your message that's going to help you amplify your brand overall. So that's actually the first time that I've had the opportunity to sort of download that in full. So I appreciate the space for it. And hopefully it was fairly clear despite being a lot of words.
Yeah, no, I get it. It takes a lot when you start a business to also figure out like how to talk about it too. And that just only comes honestly through talking about it. But I want to say, Nikki, that this makes a lot of sense. And as a podcast host myself and a podcast guest, I've done a lot of both of those things. And like what you said about podcast pitching, y'all, I am, if you listen, I love you. I appreciate you so much. Like the fact that anybody listens to this is amazing to me and so rewarding. And whether you are my friend or my grandma's not listening to this, but or uh, you know, somebody popping in or like a regular listener, because I know I do have some of those, which is so wild. But anyway,
No,
uh,
totally. It's really validating. And especially when it's somebody you don't know, you're like,
yeah.
yeah, somebody else cares.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, whoa. It makes me feel so seen. And I have, like a small podcast, and I get like a pitch at least like once a day from somebody, and I have deleted, I honestly think, all of them and not even taken the time to respond. And one, because I've had to be more like, I need to like preserve my own energy and honor, like I already suck at responding to people that are important to me. So I that's just not something I can do. But part of the reason why, Nikki, is because you can tell in those emails that they're not actually caring about my show. They haven't actually done the work for me of, here's why I am a great fit for the show and what I could bring to your show and like who I am. They haven't done that. They haven't like sometimes you can tell that they don't even know what my show is. And
Oh, that part,
y'all,
that
yeah,
annoys me more than anything. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
like it's real obvious that you don't even understand what you just did. So then it also makes me not only like I'm not going to respond because that's kind of a waste of my time, but
yeah,
also, and I'm sorry to interject here,
no,
but I just feel like some people like to believe that the shorter the better because you don't have a lot of time. But
hmm,
I would challenge that with the fact that it's not necessarily about length. Like it still needs to be succinct, but
yeah,
it also needs to give enough. And to
yeah,
your point, if it's just I had somebody who's just like, you had me at unapologetic, let's chat. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what am I supposed to do with that?
yeah,
So it's like some people I think see it as an entry point for engagement. But to me, it's like you and I are like at our core connectors. So you're
hmm,
like, I need to feel like you at least have some grasp on what the intention is here. And to me, a warmer entry of like, hey, I listened to this episode of your podcast and it was really compelling to me. Or because sometimes that can be BS too. Some people
hmm,
just throw it in there because that's what AI tells them to do.
yeah,
Well, it's more like, okay, what is it specifically about something that I do as a host or something a guest said that was compelling to you that prompted you to think this could be a good fit for you? And that's why you add value.
yeah, yeah. And y'all have landed some like relatively, like I would say, big podcasts, like podcasts that like blew my freaking mind. Um, for example, I was on Modern Moms podcast, and that woman's platform, she's amazing, by the way. If you listen to this podcast, as you know, she was on the Socially Delightful podcast. Tara Clark, love her, but huge platform. And I know I landed that podcast because my pitch was connective, but also I do think that it was connective, but it gave like specific reasons. What I do when I pitch anybody is I make sure that I I even like give like optional titles based on them and what they would need. Like, hey,
That's a great idea.
here's what I can bring to your show. Here's why I think I should be the one to do it. So much so, bestie, like I even have some ideas here, and here's how, like, I know this is your expertise and this is how we can talk about it. And I really think y'all, that is why I've had like success in this, and now I've been doing it for so long, and there's still things that we could tweak and do better. But I will say, now there's things that I've been doing this for so long that, and like, don't tell anybody, okay? This is like a secret between the podcasts. But I now have my virtual assistant, like I've created like templates of these connective pitches. And do they take her a long time to do because she has to like fill in the blank of a lot of the template? Mm-hmm. But does it work? Yeah. Like
Well,
it works. So yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, no, I think you raise an interesting point too, Jewel, which I think is it's there is a balance, I think, between optimizing for efficiency and
Mm-hmm.
being connective.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious when all you've done is swap out a name and sent the same message.
Mm-hmm.
That said, um, a great example. So in starting the business, I was like, I have hundreds, maybe thousands of connections because of my career and my podcast. And I know that I have not kept in touch with all of these people. However, I done my first draft of like, okay, how do I nurture this? How do I do this in a way where it doesn't just come off as, I have a new idea, let me tell you about it, and you somehow find a way to get me paid, right? Like, that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what I really want to do is hone in on, why am I sending this message? What am I doing? And because I was able to tie it into, you've been a guest on my show, you know that I care deeply about telling people's stories. So every single person in my network from a podcast perspective who knows me knows that that is true. We have
Mm-hmm.
had some sort of connective conversation, varying degrees of connectivity, of course. But then I was like, okay, I still don't feel right. And I talked about this with my wife, Nicole. I was like, I still don't feel right just sending this out without it feeling a little bit more personal. And so what I decided was, the part where I get into why I built my business and what I seek to achieve with it to help people, and why I'm reaching out to you to potentially share this with your network, because you're already guests. So I don't even know that these people specifically need it. Was, I'm going to take a little more time, like you're saying, and I am going to go through my list and say, okay, what is the thing about my conversation with this person that I remember that was important to me and feels like it has contributed to why I'm building this business? And so it's a few sentences at the start of the message. And I was reading this to my wife the other day, and she goes, oh, you wrote like a full paragraph about it. And I was like, yes, because this is my point. I'm worried that if I just like drop a line in of like, oh, remember when we talked about this? It still feels like I'm just like, hey, knock, knock, knock. Can I interest you in this? And in reality, what I want to say is, hey, I think about you and I think about our conversation, and I recognize the important role that our conversation, or conversations like ours, played in helping me get to a place to forge this path that will help other people share their stories in the same way that you've been able to. And to me, that was like, okay, light bulb moment, right? I don't have to do the things that everybody else is doing. And I don't have to do it the way they do it, because I'm not like that. I'm not a transactional person. I've done it. I feel icky about it. And it's very rare. When I say I've done it, it's more like, I've been in positions where I'm like, I guess I'll see how this goes. And then almost immediately I'm like, I regret that. It didn't feel right. So
Yeah.
to me, like, even just as an example, you and I have kept in touch. So, I mean, you're finding out about this because we're having a conversation, right? But I think that there's this part of me that could be like, okay, like, hey, Jewel, I've been thinking about our conversation around connection a lot. And when I first started podcasting, that was just really my primary driver. So I know we related over that a lot, and we both really value helping people connect deeper with themselves and with each other. And so a way that I'm doing that is reflected in my business. Here's what I'm up to, right? Like, I would tie in the fact that you and I have established a relationship. We have a very common mission in mind, which actually bodes. It probably honestly would have been a lengthier message, but I'm not good at coming up with it on the fly. But it's because we have a shared interest and we have a shared value
Mm-hmm.
around the basis of my business,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it would be an oversight, to like a gross oversight, to ignore that connective piece of it and just dive into a sales pitch, when the truth of the matter is that I whether or not you refer me to someone is neither here nor there. It should not affect our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But how can I promote my business if I never tell anybody about it either, right? So
Right.
it's like striking the balance of like, I care about my relationships with people like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and I also want to share with you what I'm doing, but I never want that to feel like I'm imposing or trying to get something. It's just the nature of what we have to do when you're also in a networking situation. And if you're highly reliant on referrals, which to be honest, I think is probably the best model for my business,
Mm-hmm.
then it does require a little bit of letting that guard down and being like, okay, I have to be business minded, but I also want to be intentional and in integrity with like how I approach business.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about it too from okay, here's how I see it, just imagining right now, just pulling this out of air. That one, we talked about like, okay, what are we going to like give or support the show? Um and this works, y'all. If you're like, okay, I don't have a business, I don't have a podcast, this also works with whatever opportunities you want. And I'm just gonna tell a really quick story about that, because I met with this girl recently. There's this girl like local to the Detroit area. I've seen her in networking groups a bunch, and she's awesome. I think she's the coolest person ever. And I also just sent her a pitch to be on the podcast too, by the way, but her name's Taylor. So Taylor has this really cool like business, y'all, that she created for herself. And hear me out. Her business is very, I've never seen anything like it, truly. But she works for like 3 different big companies and does like operations for them. So she basically works in these people's businesses all part time, and they're projects that light her up. So like one of them, she's like managing like their community, and like that takes, like a certain piece of her 40-hour work week pie. And then but they're all these projects that she has. And so I was asking her, I was like, Taylor, I'm just, how did you do this? And Nikki, it slapped me across the face, because what she said was, I met with them. I was like, I told them I was really passionate about what they were doing, and I asked what they needed help with, and then said I could do it. Period. 3 of them. 3 of her like light up projects.
That's so smart, because I had a meeting earlier today with a friend of mine who is finishing up his PhD in neuroscience and also has tech experience, but he hasn't had a lot of sort of like work experience in sort of a standard company format, but he's extremely skilled. His resume is great for somebody who's just finishing up education. And I said to him, I really think that you're going to have a hard time finding a job by just applying to things online. AI is doing a lot of the legwork to sift through things. So that's going to work to your disadvantage, number one. But number two is that I think you need to be meeting people and talking about these things and inserting your experience into the conversations that you're having.
Yeah.
So I love that approach. And I'm actually going to get off this call and say to him, hey, you might consider like, what is it that you're needing? Because I had said to him, while you're in the midst of looking for something more permanent, I really think you could do some consulting, even with the limited sort of the perceived limited experience that you have, because you have all this really highly technical knowledge and skills from a sort of tech perspective in terms of what the industry does. But then you also have all this very deep scientific knowledge that could benefit. It's very niche. So
Yeah.
there is a way, I think, for you to do this. And I think asking that question, well, what is it that you need? That's so brilliant and so simple, but brilliant. Why are we not all thinking like that?
Yeah. Just, what do you need help with?
Yeah.
And that also ties into your pitches, right? Like with my template, the way it's set up, and again, I don't even do it anymore, but I have tons of examples of different kinds of podcasts and topics, like personal growth, relationship topics, even business topics. I have like my templates that I have, or my past pitches that I have sent out, and then this template for how I word things. But knowing like in my template, it makes my assistant, again, it takes a while, but it makes her go, okay, what is like the goal of this podcast? And then like she has all my talking points, like how can Jewel assist with that goal, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you said, like a balance between being streamlined and connective, but it's also like, okay, how can I benefit, right, like this person? And that's very connective too. It's making that person feel seen. And I have yet to receive, I get a pitch like every day. I have yet to receive a pitch like that has that feel behind it. But also, I will say, so like, okay, I said there were like 3 buckets. I think another one that has really worked for me, and that, you are doing right now, is like telling people why I'm doing what I'm doing, and telling people what I'm doing very clearly. So that's kind of like a twofold. So when I started my business and I was doing coaching at the time, again, that was like 5 years ago, everyone was like, what, girl? Like, what sport? Like, I don't understand. So when I said I was doing coaching, like, people didn't really understand what that was. And so, granted, people didn't get what I was doing a lot of the time. And I had to learn how to like speak about it in a very like clear way. But once I did explain it to people, and then I said why it was important to me and why I was doing this, people then, even if they weren't like, oh, I'm struggling with loneliness and social anxiety, they would then send me people that do. Y'all, I don't have a lot of followers. I never really have, for like the most part. I have always been like either booked out, overbooked, or damn near booked out. Always, in the entire 5 years. And this is why, right? Like telling people, meeting people in person, connecting with people, because that is one of the most effective ways to connect with other people, telling them like what I'm doing in a very clear way, telling them why, even asking them questions and being curious about themselves, being connective, that has also like been again why I've been in business this entire time
Well,
too.
you know,
And oh,
oh,
sorry,
I'm
real
sorry.
quick. No, you're
No,
fine.
finish.
Real quick too, now that I am becoming a therapist, it's so funny. I just got a text before we got on the call today, Nikki. But people know for the most part what therapy is. And even though I've gotten a lot better at explaining coaching clearly, people know for the most part, oh, this is therapy. I've not even done yet. And somebody's like, hey, can you like do therapy with this person? And I had to be like, no, because I'm not a therapist yet. But it's meeting people in person. It's so huge. But definitely like to kind of like if we can as much as possible like summarize this like showing up relationally and connectively, letting people in on what you are doing and explaining it clearly. And I think too, like if you're looking to get a job somewhere and you're going in and like I can just imagine like meeting somebody in person or going to a business in person, I mean like what do y'all really need right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here are my skills. That I can't like I can't imagine that not working. I just
Yeah,
can't.
well, and so I one of the things, first of all, I love that you're saying all of this because it also just feels like it further validates the choice that I've made with this business because you're making really compelling points around why we need to be able to speak clearly and intentionally about what we do. Like that's a big piece of what you are getting from the conversations and the content we're creating with
Mhm.
this business. The goal is to have you be able to coalesce your personal story with your business brand. And I have seen sort of mixed reviews from people in my experience in podcasting around like, I don't care about you. I care about your business. But I do think that we're not like said directly to me, but it just sort of in observing people's commentary. But I think that it really depends too, right? Like for me, I really am at a point where if somebody doesn't have alignment with me morally, ethically, genuinely, and that line needs to be firm because I want to know that I'm working with people who value human rights the same way that I do, believe that equality and diversity are important, and these are things that I don't think should have been politicized to begin with, but here we
Mhm.
are. And so it's not to be exclusive in a way that condemns somebody. It's a boundary that I'm setting for myself because I have
Mhm.
worked for so many businesses that do not care about you as a person. So if that's what I disliked about that environment, why would I perpetuate that in my own business when I have say over it? Not to mention the fact that I actually would say, I think I'm more likely to attract more business by drawing that line in the sand because people who feel the same way in some regard are going to be like, yes,
Mhm.
thank you for saying that. It feels good to know that you align on like where you feel people, fit the bill in terms of what you're the type of platform that you're creating, people whose voices you want to elevate. Like one of the things that I had started doing when I was creating this business was thinking about creating a list basically of organizations that I would like to be able to offer my services to at no cost or much less cost because I really want the people behind those brands and those organizations to be able to speak to that and get more visibility, not because I personally have some involvement in it, but because maybe it's like a charitable mission that I care about that I want other people to be able to raise visibility for. And so I think there's this other part of me that's like if and you may feel this way as well, is like if you're creating your own business, then you have to figure out what your values are and how that applies to your business. And I think doing this with people who are new to podcast guesting is really important because, as you said, it's clarifying your message. This conversation with you is clarifying my message for me,
Mhm.
So every time you do that, you're building on that and you're extracting things that are valuable and important. And one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking through it with like, what can I do to help you or where do you need help, things like that, is that a lot like you will see that some people have a direct need that align with your skill set right now. If not, I think it's always important to kind of keep track of some of the connections. If you felt a good vibe, but maybe it's a not right now, is to like have that information available if and when the time is right, and be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm doing something new and I thought you might be interested. It doesn't have to be a sales approach. It can just be a, hey, I thought this might be of value to you. And one of the things that was coming to mind as you were saying that, you might not respond to certain messages, and same, is that I actually am submitting for a Podcasting Made Simple talk with Podmatch, and directed towards people who are guesting. And it's basically how to handle rejection as a podcast guest, which I thought you'd appreciate because we've talked so much about social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I definitely feel this pressure when I'm put in a situation where you're sort of applying for something, not the speaking engagement, but like when you're pitching yourself, you're applying to be a guest on a show. Like, let's just call
Yeah.
that what it is at its core, right? So my thought was, okay, well, one of the things that is really hard when you are trying to put yourself out there is feeling like somebody doesn't see me, or I'm not interesting enough, or like whatever story you're telling yourself, whether it's true or not. And so part of this was like, well, I think something that I want to offer to people is how you can remain optimistic and resilient in a situation where you're most likely going to hear a lot of no's or possibly never hear anything back at all. And know that you can also ask for feedback in those situations, as I mentioned before, like being able to say, hey, I understand, I appreciate you getting back to me. And if now's not the right time, or maybe I'm not the right fit for your show, would you mind sharing a little bit more? Now, people might not get back to you, but I think it also shows something to a host like yourself or myself, where we could be like, I appreciate that person was considerate of why I said no. Some people do provide it. They'll say it's not the right time, or we recently did an episode on that, etc. But I think the ambiguity can wear on you, especially if you don't see how to use those no's as feedback to offer insight, to establish like a more clear path forward. Is it, something I could say differently, or maybe this specific way that I phrased the thing that I do just didn't hit right. I mean, the amount of iterations I've had to do on the language that I used to describe it over the past several months is like, it changes rapidly, because all of a sudden I realized I'm just using a sales voice. And then I was like, this feels too markety. And then I was like, I think even the video on my website, I had one that felt really stiff. And then I put a new one up and I was like, stop it. Like, I'm just going to act like I'm going to act like the camera's your face. And I think I actually say that because I was like, I'm so much better in an engaged conversation than I am trying to like talk to everybody as if I'm, sitting right in front of a crowd. It's just not like that for me. And so I think understanding where we have room for improvement and inviting people to give us further insights can be really important as we are trying to not just build those connections, but maintain those connections as we move forward in our life and careers and other networking elements like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think having that mindset of it, of like, oh, okay, I'm going to get feedback, I'm going to get more information, or I'm not. And it's a numbers game also, because as much as we're talking about like, yeah, like personalize it, make it connective, be really clear about what you have to offer, what you're doing. It also too, I haven't said this yet, so make sure I say it really clearly. When you do that, you also like let people in on your experience, and they like are rooting for you, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah. So all of those things like definitely make it connective, but also like I expect that most of the emails I send, I'm not going to hear back from. And y'all, honestly, especially when it comes to podcast guesting, I did one huge podcast, Macy Hill, and that flooded my business for a year. If I still get people sometimes from that one podcast.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
and so landing like a couple of big ones are also like, most of my business has come from referrals, honestly, and from my clients and from people that I've networked with in person. But also, I would say the third one is through podcast guesting.
That's
And
a glowing testimonial of the power of podcasting.
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. Because having that it allows people to feel really connected to you really quickly. And yeah, doing her podcast, doing a bunch of other podcasts have really helped me again, like sustain my business for these past 5 years, which is wild. And what you said about rejection and like building resilience to that, it's also, y'all, I from somebody that like used to go from feeling like so insecure, so socially perfectionistic, so socially anxious, where it felt like it consumed me, to now those things feel like a pebble in a pond to me. Like you
Mm,
never completely outrun your humanness, y'all. It's okay, right? When those thoughts and things and stuff like that come up, I'm able to handle them, and they really I remember it was actually a huge moment for me last year when I realized I spoke in front of like hundreds of people and then went home and didn't have one thought about like overthinking it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is,
progress.
yeah, like whoa, okay, it was like a very stark change for me, because if I was around three people, it would have been, in the past. Anyway, as somebody who had that experience, have had both of those experiences, has grown so much, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Especially, I will say too, in the beginning, when you are in fear and doubt, and when you start something, you're gonna have fear and doubt. That's part of the package. I tell actually every single one of my clients, if you are listening, you're like, yeah, oh my gosh, Jewel did tell me that. That's so funny. I tell them after they sign up, like literally after they say yes, I say, great, beautiful, like easy breezy cover girl, so happy you're here. And I want you to know, especially before your next session, your brain is going to be like, oh my gosh, can I really do this? Is this really for me? And that's okay. And that's okay. That just because you haven't done it yet, you haven't created the changes to become more socially confident, you haven't created the changes to now have like the friendships in your life that you want to have. So, of course, like your brain doesn't know any better. Fear and doubt are going to come up.
One of the things that you said that just resonated so much, and I was just recycling it in my head to make sure I didn't forget, was you can never outrun your humanness. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a really powerful statement that resonates a lot, because we are constantly evolving, ideally, if we're doing the work right. And so I think when you are, as you're saying, trying something new and we're experiencing that doubt or questioning ourselves in some way, then, our humanness catches up with us. And the same thing can happen even when you've been doing it for a while. Like the seeds of doubt can creep in, we make a mistake or we think about something different than we previously did. And we're sort of shifting our perspective and we have to dialogue about that now. Like those are just really natural ways of making progress. And I feel like what you're speaking to is giving yourself grace for the evolution,
Mm-hmm.
because without that, you're sort of punishing yourself for your growth rather than being proud of your growth.
Yeah. 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 Punishing yourself. Absolutely. I think too, it also is like counter cultural, I will say, especially if you are in this like business world in any way, shape, or form, especially in our world, like business overlaps so much with like, I'm just gonna say it, like self improvement bullshit that is like just regurgitated capitalist hyper individualist beliefs. Like it's just regurgitated and repackaged and like sold to us. And especially if you are in a business world, it'll like people will push things like you have to almost like that you have to be really hard and unbothered and unaffected by things, and you need to keep going, and right, you need to grind and etc etc if you need to make it. And no, like the process of building my business has been one of the most fun, rewarding, and painful experiences ever. Truly, like painful as in like got faced with a lot of rejection, but also again that fear and doubt, especially when I started my coaching business. So much so much fear and doubt that when I got my first few clients, I charged them like something that is like closer to like minimum wage for like a and I like laugh about it now because like how was I ever going to live? You know what I mean, off of a minimum wage hour with somebody, let alone supporting them outside of that in other ways. And uh so allowing that to be part of the process, knowing that that's part of the process, helps you unshame it and really free yourself from the expectation that you need to be super hard, resilient, and unaffected by things, and you just need to be a machine and like keep going. No, I mean, my partner Aaron, who I know you've had the pleasure of meeting, which is so fun,
Yeah.
um that kooky quirky man that I know is listening, I love him so much. And he has seen me. He could probably testify more than anybody, like the amount of times where I've been like, this didn't work out, and like I cried, I'm sad, and then that's it. That's it. That's all it has to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think being letting yourself be human in this process, whatever process it is, whether you're trying to get more podcast like guest appearances, which in that case definitely go check out Nikki's new business. But whether you're trying to do that, but also too whether you were trying to do anything, I will also say as well, this we're talking about this from like a business standpoint and like from a pitching standpoint. But again, like that girl that I brought up earlier, Taylor's example of how she used this to create this like job, I also part of the reason why when Taylor told me, she was like, "Oh yeah, I just went up to people and we're like, "Oh, what do you need?" and "Oh, I can help with that." Why that oh, I just cracked my hip. Did you hear that?
That was your hip?
Yeah, that's okay. It's fine. I've also
I feel like you're
been
much younger than me, and I don't know that your hip should be cracking yet.
I have really bad scoliosis. I'm crooked, so it just
Okay.
cracks sometimes.
Forgive me.
No, no, no. It's funny. I'm crooked as all hell, but I always joke with Aaron. He likes a lady with curve. That's it because it's just one curve.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
but with Taylor and what she did, y'all, I did this recently for this internship that I wanted. I had to sell my advisors in my school on this internship. I had to sell the internship themselves to take me. And doing that process is the same thing that we talked about here. I looked on their website and I was like, what are their goals? What do they need? Okay, here's how I can do them, why I am the person for that. And I'm so passionate about this internship. My internship at Social Prescribing USA, everybody, which I absolutely love. I worked so hard to get this internship to, again, like convince my school to make it sure it counted to land this internship. I did everything that like Nikki and I are talking about here. It works. So it works for you in other areas of your life. So even before I got this internship, I got this email from my one of my now advisors at this internship. I submitted this project proposal, I done all this stuff, and I got this email and it said, "Thank you for your interest in Social Prescribing USA." And then it said something like, "What your proposal wasn't exactly what we needed." And my stomach dropped. I was with my future father-in-law, who I absolutely adore, and my eyes started to well up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't get it." And I was getting ready, y'all, to have like a full cry, like, "Okay, this is really sad" moment. That's okay. Now, the rest of the email ended up being like, "So here are the pivots we want to make." So I don't know why he sent it to me like that, as it sounded like such a rejection email. But it doesn't mean that I'm not confident in myself because I was sad about it. It doesn't mean that I'm not resilient because I was sad about it. What I actually think like defines your resilience going forward in what has helped me, what I've had to learn over and over again, is to watch the thoughts of what I'm making it mean. Because in that moment, I was really sad and I made it mean, oh, I wasn't good enough for this internship. That was. But like, no, being aware of, oh, here's what I'm making it mean. And then being like, oh, okay, I see
Yeah.
that. That's not true. Like, exactly true. Right. And that's sad. Or even if that, like, is maybe even true in this person's mind, it doesn't mean it's true for me forever, right? Like holding that, but being aware of your stories, letting yourself feel and giving yourself grace and compassion is what I would have done. And let me tell you, even if I didn't get this internship, I am confident that I would have gotten a different one that I was really passionate about.
Yeah. I wanted to peek back to part of the conversation where you were talking about trying to um or sorry, you were talking about how sometimes specifically with like coaching,
Mm-hmm.
uh coaches, the industry itself, sort of, even though there's such a variety of types of coaches.
Yeah.
One of the clients that I work with, who's a friend of mine actually now, when we first met, one of the things that I was grappling with, I was like, I feel like I can see how you're presenting yourself from a business perspective. And then we sat down and we had this conversation doing one of these sessions that I was describing. And I was like, the way you're coming off here is not what I'm getting from you right now, sitting right in front of me, you know? And I think it can be very easy for us to feel like we need to conform to the way that, quote, things are done because or quote, the way things are done, because we have this desire to like follow a script. Like if there's a script, if there's a prescription for something, then we can just get the result that we want from that. And what that discounts is the importance of what you specifically bring to the table. And so what you're talking about with this letter that you got about the internship is that they were like, we're into you. We like what you're about. We need to tweak this a little bit to make it work. And so I think reframing, you know, feedback that might feel either rejecting or maybe invalidating in some way as progress towards something more fulfilling can be really important. And what I've noticed with this person since we started working together is so much more clarity in the way that she wants to deliver the message, that now that she's creating new content, I'm like, this is what people are going to get on board with. You had clients, you built a multi-million dollar business before you were 30. Like, you did something right there for sure. But like, consider how much more you can impact people, which is what you care about more than the money anyway. If you kind of take the things that resonate from that side of the business life and apply them with like this part of who you are. Because I think for me, one of the biggest struggles when I witness people sharing, you know, what they're doing on podcasts a lot of the time is that the focus is almost entirely on the thing that they do and minimally about who they are. Now, for certain shows, that makes sense. If it is like a here's your business tips, just get to the point, that's what I'm here for, fine. Right? But if the reason you do something the way that you do it is the result of you going through something significant, to me as a listener, while I'm going to value the content you're providing, I'm probably going to have a higher likelihood of converting as a customer or a follower, or however I'm going to engage with you, assuming there's alignment in like what I'm looking for, if I get a sense of who you are as a person. Because I have engaged with coaching programs that I was like, this is a good idea. But then like I did it and I was sort of like, it was impersonal. It was structured, but also lackluster. And was it worth the money? And it was like, so I think it's important to be conscious of when like brands are really good at selling the idea without a lot of compelling information about the origins of it. And it's not that you have to know everything that happened before, right? Like, and to be fair, this like large, like more mainstream coaching person, they have a lot of compelling content, which is why I kind of got bought into the idea of it. But I think at the end of the day, if you can't have sort of a personal relationship with somebody in something that is deeply personal to you, you have to ask yourself the question if like you're actually getting what you want out of it. And I think as a podcast guest, it's also important to know that like you might feel the rejection. You might be like, I'm not getting a lot of yeses, so I'm just going to take what I'm given. That's also not always the best, you know? Like, you got to really figure out where your line is for like what you're hoping to get out of it, because you know, you can get on a show with a lot of reach, but if you don't get to say the things that you really want to say, or it's not positioned in a way that is aligned with your values and how you feel, then you're probably going to be like, well, great, it got a lot of views, but it didn't connect for me. So if it didn't connect for me, is it going to connect with other people? And I do think it's important to be discerning and know that like you have the option to say no, even if somebody else says yes too.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said too about clarifying your message too, and what resonates. And I think one thing that you didn't exactly say, but is reflected in that, is how much of that is done in relationship, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you are exactly like caring what other people think, but I have a coachy friend who is just brilliant. We meet all the time. We talk about like ethics in this industry and like what it looks like and what it means to us, and what, it's amazing. And she was telling me the other day like about her marketing, and I went over her marketing, and I was like, hey, here are all of these things that you could, do better, that are also very true to you. And when I say do better too, it was like, okay, you're really good at this type of content, and this is not bringing like the emotional part
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it
Oh,
that
yeah. I have a friend who's very similar. Who we actually been sending like voice notes back and forth to each other to kind of collaborate because she's on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So it's like a great way to just sort of have a trusted confidant who's going to tell you the truth, even if it might be a little uncomfortable,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
because you're gonna get a better result from that.
And I think that's one thing that is such a balance, and everybody's got to figure out their own. And honestly, it depends on your attachment style. It depends on how confident you are in your ability to do this, how much it is to, okay, am I going to take stock in this person's opinion, and am I not? But one thing that I do think has been really helpful for me is that I talk about, and I didn't always, but I now talk about my business with my friends. My friends that don't even like get it, I talk about it with them, and I talk about my experience in those words, because I always learn, oh, like this didn't make sense. This does. That helps me explain things better to other people. And also, there's so many other like ideas and things that friends have said to me. Like, I just recently did this series about like, can I create my most loved birthday yet? That
Yeah, I saw that.
came through talking with one of my friends about how birthdays are always lonely. And I was like, I don't think they have to be. And I remember having a lot of birthdays where I was really upset. And that's something that clients have said to me, right? Like, we get so much of this like information, feedback, but from being in relationships with other people and also practice, I've also done like over 100 podcast interviews. In the amount of times I have talked about my work, I have such a rhythm now of, I know what people are going to say, as far as like, oh, but what about this, that I can immediately come up behind it. So like, an example of that, y'all, is people will always say to me, whenever I describe that like consistency is important for friendships, so like seeing somebody like frequently, uh having like consistency of time with somebody is important in relationships, people will always say to me, well, I have a friend that like I talk to like twice a year that I'm super close with. And then I'm like, well, actually, that's because you have a lot of consistency built up in the past. You
Mm.
have a lot of history with that person. You have a lot of time invested with that person. So they can feel like your best friend, and like you still have that emotional memory with this person. Even though you don't talk to them like very consistently, the consistency has been built up in the history.
Yeah,
And
it's sort of a
so,
backlog of consistency.
exactly. And so when I'm talking with people now, y'all, because I've done this so many times, because I've talked to so many people and I've engaged, explained this to so many people, that immediately when I get to that point where I'm like, so consistency is done through frequency, and I always go, and through history. So this is why, and I explain that because I know that's going to come up. I know that's going to be their next thought. I wouldn't know that without being in conversations with other human beings. And it's a hard balance to navigate of, oh, who do I want to take this person's opinion and do I not? And there's no right or like wrong formula to gauge that exactly, but I also think this is really important for the time that we're in right now. We are in a time of social disconnection. We are in a time of a loneliness epidemic. We are in a time of like polarization in politics. And we not connecting with each other is hurting us in so many ways. But being in community, having more of the relationships we want to have, creating a more connected world, structurally, also with relational skills, all of that stuff. It means too, you have to be willing to be confronted a little bit. Being in community, being in relationships with other human beings is confronting in some way, and it is a balance to learn. Oh, do I want to take this? Do I not? But let me tell you, I'm in the happiest relationship I have ever been in, and I was a serial monogamist. I was a toxic partner, so I had a lot of partners in the past, and I'm in the happiest relationship I have ever been in, and it confronts me, and I confront him basically all of the time. We're constantly mirroring each other. So,
Mm. Well, I love that. And I also, I feel like we should have, when we start doing more guest conversations on healthy love, we should have you and Aaron on. And I'd love to be able to just chat and pick your brains about that a little bit, because Nicole and I talk a lot about like how the feedback in our relationship has given us the opportunity to alleviate those toxic patterns,
mm,
acknowledge them. I think the whole concept of confronting it gets back to that statement you made about like not being able to outrun your humanness, because it is until you are in a situation where you are repeating a pattern and you can objectively witness that,
yeah.
like when you can objectively witness your toxic patterns manifesting. I mean, I had this happen in therapy last week and I was like, oh, ooh, ooh, that has like rocked me to my core. But, I think you start to take it less personally and
Hmm.
you think about it more pragmatically. And even though, like you said, you're going to have emotions around things, you don't live and die by that emotion. Like you
Yes.
have the opportunity to choose how long you hold on to it. And like to kind of round it out in like the way we started this conversation, it's like the entire premise of why you and I do what we do in different capacities. But it's like to be able to connect more deeply with oneself is going to open up opportunities to connect more with other people. And however that looks to you, whether that is purely in your relationships day to day with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, or if that is the way that you show up in your business, the way that you help people understand you as a person, why you do what you do, the ethics and integrity behind your business, or if it's, random strangers that you meet and show an act of kindness to, like we have all of these different dynamics at play, and to be able to really orient yourself in your relationships well and feel like those have the opportunity for success or health in some way, then like you've got to start with you. And I
Hmm.
think that it's it will continue to be something that you are confronted by, because there is no end point if you are working to become a better version of yourself. And that's not like, that's all of the toxic, as you said, the kind of bullshit aside. It's like, do you just on a visceral level want to be a good person? Do you want to be a better person today than you were yesterday? I mean, hopefully, yes. Sometimes I'm a petty person. I got my moments, but I really think that the other piece of that, as you said, is like allowing those people in our lives to be mirrors for that. And in this conversation, even having you reflect back to me some of the things that like I've been considering, or shedding new light on that. Like these are really important points of exposure to the parts of ourselves that we get to reconnect with and revisit time and again as we're growing in these other areas of our lives.
Yeah. 1000%. 1000%. And one thing I can say, like almost for certainty, with knowing you and Nicole, and also I want to clarify that I said that with like a lot of gumption, but with Aaron, is that the mirrors are so, like the way we are mirroring something back. Again, it might feel confronting, like you said in therapy, but the normally, right, there is so much love behind it. And I say normally because there's sometimes where you like say something in exasperation, you're like, hey, but it doesn't mean I don't have love behind
Yeah.
what I am saying or anything like that. But having like there's been times where we have sat down and we have been like, okay, there's this like pattern showing up with you. Like let's look at this, and I have done that with my friends, and that's brought us 1,000 times closer. I have done that in my romantic relationship. And y'all, I've done that in my relationship with my business, with how I am getting business, right? But also how I'm handling the rejection in the business. Like it's honestly very, very similar. Nikki, I could talk to you for 1,000 years. You know, I absolutely just adore you so much.
Likewise.
Where can people find you? And I know you have so many amazing projects going on. So where can
Yeah, I'll
people
go.
come check you out?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jewel. Thanks for an amazing conversation as always. So, on the business end of things, personalizedpodcastservices.com. If what I'm doing sounds interesting to you, feel free to reach out to me there. And just in terms of relationships and connection, as I said, we're slow rolling it out a little bit with Healthy Love, but we've got tons of stuff in the backlog and are growing that channel on YouTube. And it's the YouTube channel is This Is Healthy Love. And you'll see myself and my wife Nicole just having conversations about relationships and how we, have to have the hard conversations sometimes to be able to have the best relationships that we can. And I really encourage people to check that out if you're in a place of trying to understand yourself and unpack your relationship dynamics. Again, it's kind of we're tiptoeing into it right now, but we've got so many great conversations on deck. And I'm just looking forward to engaging people more in that part of our community as well, because it's something that we're both super passionate about. And it was so amazing to hear you speak to your relationship with Aaron. And I love witnessing that in other people and being able to know that like there's there's really a lot of strong foundations in the relationships that the people who are in my life have as well. And it's just a lovely place to explore those dynamics further.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody go check it out. The first episode is already up of Healthy Love, and it's got so many nuggets in it. So go check it out. Go follow them. Go if you are interested in everything that we talked about today, business wise. Like what we talked about today is why I have a living, you know? So definitely go check Nikki out for support. Besides that, thank you so much for coming here and hanging out with us, y'all, today. I'm truly just delighted that you are here in ways that I cannot fully explain. And if this podcast meant something to you, it would mean so much to me if you shared it to your Instagram or any whatever social media works for you. It would mean so much to me if, and I'm sure to Nikki as well, if you shared it, it would really help us feel seen in the work that we do too. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week.